Yeah, so Condition Zero, Valve brought us in because that project was struggling, and we were already starting to do some work on bots in Counter-Strike in like 1.6. So they brought us in to do work on Condition Zero, and it was a lot of like playing the game with bots, and so a lot of focus on AI. And then Condition Zero shipped, and then we started working on Counter-Strike Source, which was bringing 1.6 into the new version of the Source engine, and bringing those old maps over, converting those old maps, and then we started to build more maps and update and re-release and update.
Right. And sort of while we were working on Source, Valve was always saying, "Hey guys, why don't you sort of start working on your own thing? Do you have any ideas?" Of course we had ideas, right? But one of the things that was sort of happening while we were doing this is a lot of people were playing bots with knives, right? So Mike wrote the Counter-Strike bot, and a lot of people were playing with it. And what they would do is they'd go in and they'd set up a match with a team full of terrorists, but they would limit them. All they could have was knives. Right, and then it would be like 1, 2, just a couple guys on the counter-terrorist side, and they could have whatever they wanted, right, full guns. And it was basically just survive, right, and so you'd have this little horde of terrorists with knives coming at you, and I remember looking at that and us thinking, hey, that's kind of like zombies, right, and I think that probably is what really sparked the idea for Left 4 Dead. And so Chris went in and he took a Counter-Strike map and sort of spookified it, and made it look kind of dark and creepy, and then we took the terrorist skins and turned them into zombies, and then just sort of started iterating from there. Added more terrorists so that we could have bigger hordes, and then made it so they could respawn. And
yeah. So eventually all that stuff rolled in, like it just kept going, and that's kind of where Left 4 Dead came from.
Yep.
¿Qué animal ha hecho esto?
Parece que los que tenemos que matar.
Evolve was a really old idea that we'd been talking about for a long time.
Before Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, since before Left 4 Dead, as friends. And obviously in Left 4 Dead we got to play around with co-op. We got to do some really cool stuff with AI. We got to do some procedural stuff, and so all those ideas kind of funneled back into Evolve and updated, the game design so that we were on the hunter side. It was co-op, but at a higher level, than Left 4 Dead had.
Right.
And then we got experience with this asymmetry, and being the monster. So. We also pulled from movies like it's very easy to look at things like the Predator movie like Predator, and want to sort of have a game that was that experience.
Right.
These Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's not a survivor like in Left 4 Dead. He's not a victim. He's a guy who's going out and hunting for Predator. Trying to find that. And so that's what we wanted, a group of hunters that were geared up, that had all this cool gadgetry and stuff like that.
They started out badass.
Yeah. So they're going out, they have harpoon guns, and they're going out and they want to find this monster and stop him. But this monster is really, really strong and can get, bigger, more powerful over time. So, that's kind of where it all started.
Este es el mejor equipo de cazadores de la historia. Nos han contratado para proteger la colonia más valiosa de la frontera. Al menos lo era, hasta que aparecieron los bichos.
I mean, that's the reason we didn't make it initially, was just because we didn't feel like there was, we really wanted that Predator experience, right?
Big open spaces.
Where there was big open spaces, like, dense rainforests, that sort of thing. Large play spaces where you didn't know, you had to hunt, you had to track, you needed a space to do that, and we wanted it to look very convincing and real lifelike, and back then, when Left 4 Dead came out, a lot of games were very boxy, then, and so it really just didn't feel like we had the tech, and it wasn't until the later iterations of the CryEngine, and then really the next gen platforms, which these new systems, Xbox One, PS4, and the newer cards and stuff on the PCs, where now we can build all of that stuff and have it look lifelike and branches move and
sort of do justice to the original vision.
Yeah.
Son grandes, aumentan de tamaño y se acaban de merendar medio planeta.
That's a good question. I mean, we've been sort of talking about that a lot, and I think ultimately, sort of whether or not Evolve is an esport is depends on the community, right? I mean, do people want that, right? I don't know. I mean, you can disagree with me, but I don't think you make a game to be an esport, right? I think you make a fun game, and then the community sort of demands an esport, or it just sort of happens. I mean, none of the games I think that are big esports went into it with that intention. They all sort of just worked their way up to that because the fans and the community wanted it.
We do know the game is super entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
During the big alpha, it was one of the biggest games on Twitch to spectate. So there's something about that. I think it's an easy game to understand. You can look at the game and you can see these 4 tiny hunters fighting against this one big monster, and everybody gets it, and everybody either roots for a hunter because they feel like they're too small, or they root for the monster because they feel like the monster is outgunned and outnumbered. And so everybody sort of picks a side and roots for that side, and so it's fun to watch. So that's certainly something. And now today with like Twitch and YouTube and all the streaming and stuff, like anybody can put these videos up online. That we'll have to. We're trying to play it by ear and see how it goes. And once the game is released, we have a live team that continues to work on the game. And so we'll be looking for like ways to update in order to get the most out of it.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those things that if the community really wants it, then we're down to support it. It won't be in the final game, but I'm not going to promise anything because you never know. But I would say there's a very good chance of spectator mode being in in an update.
El problema ya no son los animales. Se trata de una evacuación a gran escala. Preparaos. Allá vamos.
Well, I mean, I think the reason you have a big alpha, or the reason we had a big alpha, and I think the reason anyone does an alpha is to find out, how is the game working the way we expected it to, right? What's broken? What's not broken? How are people sort of playing the game? And
and what are they reacting to?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we found were the progression system, unlocking a new character. A lot of people felt like took too long, and some of the goals that you had to do to unlock a character were too hard to accomplish or too arbitrary. So we revised all that stuff. Our matchmaking system, we did a really good job. Our matchmaking system. So you choose a role preference. So if you really like being Assault, you put Assault as your #1 pick, and during the big alpha, what we found was that most of the time you got your first pick, which was great. But we were prioritizing that so heavily that our matchmaking system would sometimes put new players with experienced players in order to give them that #1 preference. So we're revising that system so that we're pulling from, we're gonna choose role preferences from only players from level 1 to level 5 now, or level 5 to level 10. So we're gonna sort of isolate those groups a little bit more, so our matchmaking system is improved. So it's a lot of observing the game and adjusting things. It's very easy to go in and change numbers and have big effects on the game. So I mean, at the end of the day, there was a lot of things that didn't go right in the big alpha, but those things improved the game.
Right.
For the beta.
And that's the thing, that we take out of it is, look, we would much rather, if there are going to be problems, the alpha is when we want them to happen, right? Because that's, sometimes I wonder how games make it out successfully without doing that stuff, right? Because there's just so much that can happen that you can't predict. So we got a lot of good information out of that, even in the cases where the game sort of stumbled, right, and long load times or what have you, or the PS4 thing, we were able to take a lot out of that and learn it and fix it to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Son unos bichos enormes, muy feos y con mucho blindaje.
No, I didn't hear any. Did you?
Not too much. I mean, sometimes it's a preference. Some people wanted the option to go first person on the monster, but that's just more. That we need to either build it as a third person or a first person.
Right.
And we think overall third person is the way to go on that. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we had early on, and so we can safely say, yeah, we tried it, and it didn't work as good as you might think. There were problems with being a monster in first person that we felt like impacted the game in a negative way.
We also had some people who didn't know how to climb and stuff as a monster, right? And that's kind of it was a big ask for us to just say, here's the game in alpha, jump into multiplayer. You've never played around in your life, but go play competitively against these other people online. So during the beta, we will have tutorials in the game, and they will teach you how to play the monster and how to play the hunter. And we think that will be a lot better experience for people in the future.
Right.
Pero no saben a quién se enfrentan.
Because the monster is really built to fight hunters. All of his abilities, all the things that he can do, are made to fight people. And so when you try to when you try to make those abilities work against another monster, they don't work at the end of the day.
Right. Looked kind of silly.
Yeah. So I mean,
monsters
the game,
punching each other's kneecaps over and over. And over.
Yeah, the game at its core is sort of those teams fighting each other, and the hunters, for example, monsters have a ton of health, and hunters have very little health in comparison. Mm-hmm. So monsters don't actually do much damage to other monsters, so they would just fight endlessly. So we would have to change the game a lot. We'd have to basically go build another game in order to get that mode.
That would end up being kind of like a fighting game.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.